Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be looking at a single source, a poem
Eh.
by William Shakespeare called A Fairy Song. Now, this poem, it's short, but it's packed with a lot of imagery and a lot of symbolism. So I thought it would be fun to sort of take a close look at it and then and see what we can unpack. And especially, when it comes to fairies, right? Like Shakespeare wasn't just making up stuff. He was drawing on a whole tradition of folklore and belief. So what I'm hoping we can do today is kind of use this poem as a jumping off point to explore how people in Shakespeare's time, really thought about fairies and their role in the natural world. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. And I think this poem is a really rich source for that because, like you said, it's so short, but it's got so much packed into it. And I think one of the things that's really interesting about it is the way that Shakespeare blends sort of traditional folklore ideas about fairies with these kind of almost like proto-scientific ideas that were circulating at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Like right from the first line, right? Over hill, over dale, thorough flood, thorough fire, I do wander everywhere.
Right.
It's like this fairy is not just flitting around a garden. This is a being of serious power.
Yeah.
It can travel anywhere.
Yeah.
It's not bound by the laws of physics.
Right, exactly. And it's that kind of like boundless energy that's really striking, I think. And it kind of sets up this idea of the fairy as this kind of embodiment of nature's power, It's not just...
It's like a cute little thing with wings. It's something more, something, I don't know, almost primal, maybe.
Absolutely.
And then it gets even more interesting when we learn what this fairy is actually doing.
Right.
It's not just wandering around for fun. It's got a job to do.
Yeah, it's working for the fairy queen, right?
Exactly. It's dew-dropping the fairy queen's orbs upon the green. Now, when I first read that, I was like, okay, dew-dropping, that sounds pretty, pretty indelicate. Yeah. But then I started thinking about the symbolism of dew. I mean, dew was incredibly important to people in Shakespeare's time. They saw it as this like life-giving force.
Yeah.
It was associated with fertility, with growth, with healing even.
Yeah, I mean, it was thought to have all sorts of medicinal properties and magical properties.
Well, exactly. So when this fairy is dew-dropping the fairy queen's orbs, it's not just making things look pretty, right? It's like it's performing this vital function. It's channeling this
this
power, this life force into the natural world.
Right. And I think you can even connect it to, the ideas of alchemy that were circulating at the time. Alchemists were obsessed with dew.
They were trying to capture it.
They were trying to capture, to use in their experiments and to create their potions. So it's like this idea that dew
had this
kind of magical potency. Yeah.
And then we get to my favorite part of the poem. The cowslips, and I serve the fairy queen to dew her orbs upon the green. The cowslips tall her pensioners be. In their gold coats, spots you see. Those be rubies, fairy favors. In those freckles live their savors.
Yeah.
Now, when you first read that, it just sounds kind of whimsical and charming, right?
Yeah.
But the word pensioners, that's not just a random word that Shakespeare threw in there. Pensioners were these like elite soldiers who were personally loyal to the monarch.
They were like the queen's bodyguard, basically.
So by calling the cowslips the fairy queen's pensioners, Shakespeare's elevating them, right? He's giving them this status, this important. It's almost like he's saying that the natural world is organized just like the human world, with this hierarchy, this chain of command. And then the gold coats and the ruby spots. I mean, come on. That's just pure visual delight.
Yeah.
The gold coats obviously symbolizing the sun's favor.
Yeah.
And the ruby spots, the fairy favors, like little blessings bestowed upon these flowers.
Like jewels, yeah.
And then we get to the last two lines of the poem, which, I gotta say, kind of threw me for a loop. And I must haste me back again, for the snail doth creep, and the worm doth crawl, and hang a pearl in every cowslip's ear.
Okay, so the pearls.
Yeah, the pearls. Pearls are so delicate, so precious, so associated with, human artistry, with wealth.
Right.
It almost feels out of place in this, like, rustic, natural setting. Right?
Yeah, it's an interesting contrast. I mean, do you think Shakespeare is being ironic here? Or is he suggesting that even the wildest parts of nature possess this kind of inherent elegance?
Maybe that's it. Maybe he's trying to blur the lines between nature and artifice. You know? Is that pearl a product of the fairy's magic?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it something that was already present within the cowslip, just waiting to be revealed?
Right, right. It's kind of like that idea of natural magic that was so popular at the time, the belief that the supernatural was
Yeah.
woven into the fabric of the everyday world.
It's a lot to think about for such a short poem. But I think that's what makes it so great. It's like Shakespeare's giving us this glimpse into a world where the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural, between the human and the fairy, are constantly shifting. And it's up to us, the reader, to kind of figure out where those boundaries lie.
Absolutely. And I think, going back to your initial question about how people in Shakespeare's time thought about fairies and their role in the natural world, I think this poem really does give us a sense of that. It shows us that fairies were seen as these powerful beings who were intimately connected to nature, and that they played an active role in shaping and maintaining the natural world. And I think it also raises this really interesting question. What is Shakespeare ultimately saying about the relationship between humanity and the supernatural? Is one of harmony, like we were talking about before?
Yeah.
Or is there a hint of something darker, something beyond our understanding? I think that's something worth pondering.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great place to leave it for today. So for all of you listening out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Shakespeare's A Fairy Song. And, next time you see a cowslip, maybe take a closer look. You never know. You might just find a pearl in its ear.